Scale back and streamline, but maintain security. The President and the Pentagon outlined the reshaping of the U.S. military and its focus.
And as the U.S. presence in Afghanistan has begun winding down.
Yes, the tide of war is receding, but the question that this strategy answers is what kind of military will we need long after the wars of the last decade are over? And today, we're fortunate to be moving forward from a position of strength.
The Defense Strategy Review, outlined at the Pentagon, aims to refocus U.S. strategy toward an increased presence in the Pacific, with an eye toward China and its rapid military buildup. The review also marks a shift away from military budgets that exploded in the wake of 9/11. Congress enacted defense cuts last summer, amounting to more than $489 billion over the next 10 years. But the cuts will mean streamlining, with the Army dropping from 570,000 possibly to 490,000 soldiers over 10 years. The size of the Marine Corps is also expected to be reduced. He does not mean to repeat mistakes made after World War II and Vietnam by cutting too much.
Our military will be leaner, but the world must know the United States is going to maintain our military superiority with armed forces that are agile, flexible, and ready for the full range of contingencies and threats.
That did not stop criticism of the new strategy from Republicans in Congress. The chair of the House Armed Services Committee, California Congressman Howard "Buck" McKeon, issued a statement calling it a lead-from-behind strategy for a left-behind America.
Должна размываться, даже если это удобно для достижения каких-то текущих политических целей. Вплоть до цели избраться на соответствующую позицию. Это просто опасно для мирового порядка. А примеров государств в обход Организации Объединенных Наций, заявление о том, что тот или иной приходом к власти радикалов. Я уже не говорю, что в какой-нибудь момент такие действия, которые подрывают государственный суверенитет, могут закончиться вполне себе такой полноценной региональной войной. И даже, никого не хочу пугать, с применением ядерного оружия. Об этом применением ядерного оружия.
The more unlawful assassination of Muammar Gaddafi, the administration has done nothing but show a disgusting abuse of executive power and criminal disregard for domestic and international law, a disregard that nations like Russia and even high-level U.S. military officials view as threats to national sovereignty. Russia has repeatedly stated that that is the issue over military intervention in Syria and Iran. Sovereignty. That is the issue at stake with all the threats occurring at this point. And beyond a shadow of a doubt, it's what's at stake with the joint U.S.-NATO anti-ballistic missile system in Europe. And if his and others' warnings are not heeded, whether it's concerning Iran, Syria, or Russia directly, the United States will have violated the rights of a sovereign nation. The non-binding resolution H.R. 568 that overwhelmingly passed 401 to 11 effectively calls for a military attack on Iran when it obtains nuclear weapons capability.
Our ground forces have not come under attack from enemy air forces since the Korean War. This is because the United States has been able to maintain air supremacy, providing the freedom of action required by the joint warfighter to emerge victorious on the battlefield. However, for the first time, our claim to air supremacy is in jeopardy. We are being challenged across the entire spectrum to include land, sea, air, cyber, and space. One of the most pervasive threats, modern ground-based air defenses, has reached unprecedented lethality. Our overwhelming success in Desert Storm highlighted the inherent vulnerabilities of our adversaries' defenses. Since then, there has been a global revolution to modernize air defense systems. At At the heart of this threat is the Surface-to-Air Missile, or SAM. Since the first SAMs were deployed by the Germans in World War II, our adversaries and potential adversaries have relentlessly pursued their development in an effort to counter U.S. air power. Over time, nearly every air power advancement fielded has been matched by SAMs, becoming increasingly lethal against a greater variety of air targets at longer and longer ranges. Both Russia and China are producing state-of-the-art SAMs. Shown are several systems that are currently fielded that directly challenge our bid for air supremacy. These modern systems can engage as many as a dozen targets simultaneously, at ranges in excess of 100 miles. Furthermore, they are not tied to a prepared site. They are highly mobile, allowing them to relocate in minutes rather than hours or days. To illustrate the dynamics of the SAM threat, here is the threat ring posed by a Vietnam-era SA-2 SAM. It's located on the Washington Mall, with its short-range coverage. And now we add the SA-10 and the SA-20 system, the same system being sold to Algeria and Iran. You can clearly see the dramatic increases in ranges. Next we add the SA-21, which is currently deployed in Russia. And finally, Russia's developmental S-500 will be capable of engaging targets as far away as Charlotte and Buffalo. Senior Russian military officials have claimed this revolutionary aerospace defense system moves ahead of their potential enemies by 15 to 20 years. The system should be fielded by 2015. As you can see, these systems are being proliferated globally in battalion strength, and we expect this trend to continue. The proliferation of these lethal double-digit SAMs is currently one of the most significant challenges we face. The air defense threat is not restricted to land. These same systems are being deployed on board their ships, extending their air defense umbrella well over Taiwan. Looking at today's notional Chinese air defense umbrella on the Strait, it is redundant, extensive, and survivable, creating an environment that would be extremely difficult, if not impossible, for fourth-generation fighters to penetrate or defeat. Moving on to the air threat, the production and proliferation of advanced fighters provides capabilities equal to or surpassing our legacy fighters. There are several advanced European fighters currently being fielded. Gripen, Fail, Typhoon, that are very competitive with our legacy F-15s, and in some areas they are technologically superior. These fighters are being marketed worldwide and could be sold to a future adversary. Our potential adversaries are making equally significant strides in fielding the latest technologies. One only has to look at the trend in aircraft development over the past several decades to see where our legacy systems are being overtaken. Said another way, 20 years ago our qualitative edge was matched with the appearance of the Russian Su-27 flanker. Today our legacy fighters are being outmatched by the latest Russian and Chinese fighters. As you can clearly see, there is basically no distinct fourth-generation advantage we hold. Russia is at the forefront of advanced fighter technology development. China is also rapidly moving forward with significant aerospace developments based on improvements to existing foreign technologies. Both countries continue to push the envelope, fielding fifth-generation technologies. Both Russia and China are ready and willing to export these fighters to anyone willing to pay for them. You can clearly see the extent of the proliferation problem. It will only get worse. Both China and Russia are also developing follow-on missiles with significantly increased range performance. They are outpacing us in the missile arena and can directly challenge our AMRAAM superiority. Enhancing our adversaries' first-shot capability is their rapid integration of modern jammers, specifically digital radio frequency memory, or DRFM-based jammers. These jammers can capture and replicate, at high speed, our air intercept radars. It can return a false signal, leaving our fighters blind at the most critical moment of the fight. Again, both Russia and China are fielding DIRFM systems that can deny any first launch capability. Bottom line, the size of the stick no longer matters. This technology has shifted the first shot advantage into the adversary's court. Some of these fighters are equipped with very advanced Russian engines that incorporate thrust vectoring technology. This technology provides significant and dynamic maneuverability and turning capability. The F-15C is no longer the world's premier air superiority fighter. No matter how you look at it, Russian and Chinese advanced flanker variants have achieved parity or surpassed many of the Eagle's technological advantages. Looking at other threats, arguably one of the most important challenges we face is the cyber threat. Russia and China, recognizing our vulnerabilities, are maturing dedicated and highly sophisticated programs to exploit and attack our military computer networks. We are absolutely dependent on these networks to control and direct our force in peacetime and wartime. Last but certainly not least is the issue of space superiority. For the first time, the U.S. is no longer uncontested for control of space. In January 2007, China shocked the world by destroying a low Earth orbit target satellite with a ballistic missile-based interceptor. This event underscores that space is no longer a sanctuary for us.
Has been ordered to prepare for war in a training directive issued. The order comes from the General Staff Headquarters, which oversees the Army. Forces should train to, quote, fight and win battles, the directive said. The strong words are in striking contrast to previous ones. In particular, the use of the word dazheng, Chinese for fighting wars, has not been seen before. Japan was not mentioned in the directive, but this commentary in the People's Liberation Army Daily conjures up images of the Japanese invasion of China during World War II. It goes on to suggest Japan is gathering other East Asian countries to, quote, contain China. Some Chinese military officials have urged a quick strike to assert China's sovereignty over the contested Diaoyu or Senkaku Islands. This is the metaphor they use, kill a chicken to scare the monkeys.
And we have a Fox's alert for you now. Some new details that we're getting on our top story. Unsettling news, massive budget cuts possibly coming to our armed forces. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel reportedly plans to shrink the Army to its smallest force since before World War II.
Our recommendations were guided by an updated defense strategy that builds on the President's 2012 Defense Strategic Guidance. As described in the upcoming Quadrennial Defense Review report, this defense strategy is focused on defending the homeland against all strategic threats, building security globally by projecting U.S. influence and deterring aggression, and remaining prepared to win decisively against any adversary should deterrence fail. To fulfill this strategy, DoD will continue to shift its operational focus and forces to the Asia-Pacific, sustain commitments to key allies and partners in the Middle East and Europe, maintain engagement in other regions, and continue to aggressively pursue global terrorist networks. Our reviews made two new realities very clear. First, the development and proliferation of more advanced military technologies by other nations. That means that we are entering an era where American dominance on the seas, in the skies, and in space can no longer be taken for granted. Second, defense spending is not expected to reach the levels projected in the 5-year budget plan submitted by the President last year. Given these realities, we must now adapt, innovate, and make difficult decisions to ensure that our military remains ready and capable, maintaining its technological edge over all potential adversaries. However, as a consequence of large budget cuts, our future force will assume additional risks in certain areas. In crafting this package, we prioritize DoD's strategic interests and match them to budget resources.